Good evening and welcome to Community Forum for Wednesday the 7th of November. I'm your host, Byron Campbell, and of course co-host Chris Diali. Welcome, Chris. Good evening.
Good evening, Byron. Good evening to our listeners and our viewers. It's good to be back in person. The last time I was over the digital divide, so it's good to be here.
Yeah. Well, viewers, we have an interesting program for you this evening. We have our special guest, of course, Kassandra Michelle, and we'll be looking at governance and people's development and general issues. So we look forward to that. Of course, we're going to take this program, MTV Community Forum, comes with you compliments or in collaboration with the Grenada Development Bank and Allied Laboratories. So we take a short break here and we'll see you in a minute.
Community Forum comes to you in association with the Grenada Development Bank.
The choice to finance your education is clear. Try the Grenada Development Bank Won't You Dare. Our special student loan was designed with care for your growth, development, and welfare. This is how champions are made. Take on that challenge. Don't ever be afraid. Our special student loan will come to your aid with 100% of your study costs being paid. Vulnerability is but a temporary condition, and conquering it is strictly ambition. You can secure victory despite your position with a loan for accommodation, books, and tuition. We see your potential. We notice your drive. So on your marks, get set. Let your dreams come alive. Don't let hurdles of doubt get in your way, because you are the future. Contact GDB today. Our special student loan is just one application away. Grenada Development Bank. Development through financing.
Welcome back to MTV Community Forum. Chris, we lost a gentleman today, one of the owners of M&N Hardware, Mr. Mohan, someone you knew.
Yes. I want to spend a couple seconds on this. Francis Mohan, one of the brothers of M&N and in the business. He was, in my view, the pioneer of certain things. Condolences to the family and so on. He was, an excellent businessman from the point of view, always willing to try something new, Byron. Mm-hmm. And I remember when he started the business in Hope, one of the few things that he had that was different to the rest was that you could call him 2 o'clock in the morning if you have an emergency for some part. Yeah. So he was the first to introduce a kind of 24-hour service for construction materials. And delivery. He revolutionized the delivery of stuff, free delivery to homeowners who were building and so on. And then the business expanded into roof sheeting, window making, and doors making. So he was really a pioneer behind that. Mm-hmm. And it's sad to see to lose him at this juncture. But again, I just think he's one of the businessmen in Grenada just needed to
deepest condolences too,
and did things differently.
He and his family. Chris, of course, our economy, we're now moving into more of a service economy, whether it's with the government or private sector. I know you have some concern about service issues, the quality of service. Where are we at this junction?
Right. I am of, and I say this without apology, I think in Grenada we don't recognize the difference between service and servitude. And it probably comes from our socialization and history from slavery and so on. Yeah. But I think as a service economy, because tourism is about service, education is about service, and private sector, statutory bodies, excuse me, when you go to a business place to transact business, or you go to a government organization, just saying good morning to the person is a welcoming kind of thing. Some of us don't even say good morning. We're not looking at us. We're on with phones. You go to a business place and nobody will come to you and ask you, good morning, sir, good morning, ma'am, how can I assist you, what are you looking for? And give it, that just seems to be at a minimum or low. And I find for a service economy, we need to talk about this more and get more people. And we'll talk about training, but if you don't have it in you to offer good service, then no matter what training we give you, it wouldn't assist. So I'm saying we need to, as people, look inwards and see what it is we ready. I mean, just walking the road and saying, good morning, so how are you, can I assist? That's simple things.
It's the small things. Huh?
Yeah, small things. And that's what people remember.
Yeah.
I will come back to your place. Yeah. The level of interaction, the personalization of it, and so on. These are things that I think, we just need to do more as a people.
Yeah.
And, I just think we need to talk more about
Chris, this issue comes up every week. It's current with me. That is, of course, the Middle East issue. The question of what's happening in Palestine right now, in Gaza in particular, and the occupied lands that Israel is presently occupying. But I want to go to what's current. I mean, I heard the Secretary General of the United Nations talk about, there was a press conference 2 days ago, he talked about the graveyard for children in Gaza. Talks about over 4,000 children have died. The death toll now is over 10,000. I remember I told you that if it's 100 to 1,000. So if 1,400 Israelis were killed, expect 14,000. That's the numbers. That's how it's go. But he made the point that there's a clear violation of international law, humanitarian laws. He talked about hospitals being bombed, UN facilities. He talked about some 69 UN officials have been killed, and a lot of them were their families. But we continue to see the global demonstrations or support for the Palestinian cause, because one thing we heard, and this is important, this has been echoed in the UN also, the point that Amnesty International, which is a bona fide, recognized international institution, I made it very clear that apartheid exists in Israel. And I've been looking at it closely, and it's true. So what we've seen there, Chris, is what we're hearing is that the conditions there, the apartheid system in Israel, is worse than what had occurred what happened in South Africa. Because what you have two sets of laws in Israel. You have Israeli laws for Israelis, but you have military laws for the Palestinians. So two different laws. You have different level of identification. They have different cards, even in the same state. You have you don't have free movement of people. You have resources. The average Israeli use about 6-7 times more water that is allocated than the Palestinian, for example. Their lands have been taken, the destruction of their homes, ongoing, the collective punishment, demolition of whole villages, the forced relocation of people, and administrative detention. When you look at all of these factors, and I've been looking at it lately, Chris, it's appalling. And that tells me, and that showed me, and this is not giving glory to what Hamas did. This is wrong. And this has to be recognized as such. But what gave rise to this? These people feel that they have no choice in the matter. But right now, I think the big issue is a humanitarian ceasefire. This is what is required. The UN resolution, which Grenada supported, as I said last week, for a ceasefire. Even the G7 has now asked for a ceasefire, humanitarian. But of course, be very clear on this, of the role that the United States is playing in all of this. So, when we come back here next week, it's going to be 14,000.
Well,
this is unacceptable, and the amount of children that are being... And Chris,
the
final point I want to make is that we have to understand that what's happening there can affect us, and I made the point, from energy markets and food markets, and the whole global factors that are taking place. So we are not immune from what's happening there.
I will only say one thing about it, that the world seems to be treating Palestinians as less than human.
Yeah.
And the Europeans, the Americans, and all who support this tragedy that's happening, that is the distinction, in my view, they're making.
Yeah.
Right? And if we in the 21st century will consider one human being of a lesser person than another, then something is wrong about us. And that is all I will say about that.
That's fine, Chris, but look,
And this has been going on in Palestine and Israel for many generations.
Of course,
not now.
of course, that's
And
the other point. 74 years.
The countries
yeah.
who support
yeah.
that apartheid type
Yeah.
system
Yeah.
have known it for decades.
Yeah.
So
Chris, let's move on. Look, budget is coming up, Chris. I know the government is far advanced in the preparation because we likely have this later this month or early next month. They haven't given a date as far as I know. But that process is taking place. What are your expectations? You expect higher taxes, lower taxes?
What I believe,
what about revenue, Chris?
I have been looking at what has transpired over the last year. And when you look at the spending that government have been engaging in, and I'm talking here recurrent side, not so much on the capital side, because the capital side is financed through loans and grants and some
that's
recurrent.
Correct. That's correct.
The surplus on recurrent. But for the recurrent expenditure, which have increased significantly through wages and other things, the fact that government is looking to move the Financial Responsibility Act KPI of wage bill from 9% of GDP to 13%, and some people are even saying they're up to 13 already. How the IMF would look on that and frown on that, I believe, is an issue for them. So I expect that probably VAT may be adjusted, move from 15 to a higher percentage. Probably we may see something happening with land taxes.
They said no increase in property taxes.
Yeah, but the property tax, they say no increase in the rate. But if the rate had to be based on something, normally it's on the value of the property. If the value of the property goes up, your property tax.
Are they applying the new values?
Increase?
Do you know? You don't know.
Well, we don't know yet, but what is the sense of doing the valuation if you don't want to apply it? Probably is going to be not in this budget, but in the next one.
Well, what they said is that to give better evaluation of damages in case of hurricanes or
but adjusters for insurances doesn't use that. They come in and look at your policy and see what's the value on your policy that you insure for.
So you anticipate this matter. But the other key areas of revenue, Chris, particularly as you noted earlier for capital expenditures of special projects, is the CBI program. And I just want to bring to your attention, Chris, what's going on there. The European Union has called for the immediate repeal of this golden passport. What they reported is that there's a proliferation within Caribbean countries. They said 5 countries, including Grenada, sold 88,000 passports. That's a lot. They're proposing to overhaul regulations, saying they're concerned about this so much for it could enable infiltration of organized crime, money laundering, tax evasion, and corruption. So they want to move to a level where they suspend visa exemptions for countries that sell citizenship to buyers who do not have a genuine link to the country. What's a genuine link?
Right.
So don't you have some concern about this, Chris, that this could affect our income?
Yes, it possibly could. But let me say this, Byron. What are the 5 things they listed? Money laundering, organized crime, tax evasion, corruption. Right. Organized crime and money laundering is happening in which capitals? Their capitals.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have money here to launder.
Yeah.
We're too small.
Yeah.
Right? They have billions moving through their system. So money laundering that happen is there.
Yeah.
When you look at the laws, we have more laws concerning those things than these countries
that they impose on us, by the way.
That they impose.
Yes.
So I say that to say that argument carries no weight. The real issue from my perspective is that these countries are seeing high net worth people who are part of the CBI moving their investments around and away from these economies because of what is happening in the world and what they predict and so on. And they're going to more tropical countries. It's not only us in the Caribbean, there are countries in Asia, countries around the world that is doing CBI
But they have
programs.
the power, big stick.
They do. They do have the power. And they have applied it to us when it came to our banking sector. And they were restricting us in the banking stuff. So it is always something that they will do and look to do. We have to come together as countries who have CBI programs because England have a big CBI program, Canada have a big CBI program, but we never hear about the corruption and the type of people are in their programs. They always look to us and say that we can't control and we can't do.
Still talking about income, you proposed some time ago about a VAT-free day. You think that other countries have it, other Caribbean countries have it. What is a VAT-free day? What are you proposing? But in the consultation, Chris, maybe you should go forward and make the point.
Well, I think...
Are you going to attend one of these consultations?
No, I did make the point. We had a virtual...
Or the private sector
we had
and
a
their
virtual
representation?
Consultation, and I made the point that a VAT-free day is a big thing for consumers, so that consumers will prepare for this VAT-free day. It goes across vehicles, construction material, food, you name it. It's a VAT-free day. And the transactions that happen for businesses is a huge thing. Yes, you may argue government will lose X amount of revenue on the day, but it's after that, the economy, the things that the multiplier effect that happens because of the VAT-free day, government will gain in the long term or in the medium term. So I am proposing, I mean, I just came from St. Kitts. St. Kitts have almost 4 VAT-free days.
For the year.
Yes. They do one in August to facilitate parents who have to send back their children to school and the cost and so on. They do one in November and one in December. And people prepare for those VAT-free days. Vehicles, for example, they move many vehicles because the banks get involved to finance this, and everybody knows what's going on. So I think it's something that our government should consider. I wish they could do it in this budget cycle.
Minister of Finance, please take this recommendation, one VAT-free day for
we could start with one
and
see how it goes.
Chris, we had to move on, but quickly, I just want to say that there's an agricultural census taking place that started. I'm encouraging persons to get on board because we need this data to know what exists, you know, but also this will help policymakers, planning and project development as we go forward. So it's in the interest of farmers.
I just want to say something to you on that. I heard the minister is Adrian. Right?
Thomas,
Adrian Thomas, the honorable minister, speak about where he went. He visited a country where he saw the effect of greenhouse. I think he was talking to, I can't remember the name of the country, but it's like desert they have. They have no soil and things like us. And he was amazed that these people, I think it was Israel or one of them, in the countries in that environment, and saying that they export things like tomato year round, and they have soil and climatic conditions like us. I mean, I tired say it, Byron. We need to get the science in agriculture.
And we're going to move on to our special guest. But just one thing I want to say, Chris, that I was looking at something in climate change, and the European scientists, well, the European Union, the scientists there are saying that 2023 is on track to be the hottest year on record for 125,000 years. October was the peak of it. But we talk more about that, and we have to move on to a special guest, Chris. Viewers, please stay with us. Again, when we return, we have our guest, special guest, Kassandra Michelle, and she'll be joining us in a moment. Please stay with us.
The choice to finance your education is clear. Try the Grenada Development Bank Won't You Dare. Our special student loan was designed with care for your growth, development, and welfare. This is how champions are made. Take on that challenge. Don't ever be afraid. Our special student loan will come to your aid with 100% of your study costs being paid. Vulnerability is but a temporary condition, and conquering it is strictly ambition. You can secure victory despite your position with a loan for accommodation, books, and tuition. We see your potential. We notice your drive. So on your marks, get set. Let your dreams come alive. Don't let hurdles of doubt get in your way, because you are the future. Contact GDB today. Our special student loan is just one application away. Grenada Development Bank. Development through financing.
Concerned about your general health and wellness?
Do you need to know your complete blood count, lipid profile, or HbA1c?
Maybe you're an athlete or work in an environment that requires regular drug screening.
Interested in STI screening? What about renal, liver, or thyroid tests?
All these tests, plus hundreds more, are available at Allied Laboratories.
At Allied Laboratories, we are committed to providing the best service with accurate results. We now have 3 fully equipped locations to better serve you. You can contact our Grand Anse branch at 403-3488. You can contact our Grenville branch at 410-3488. Or you can contact our newest addition, the Guelph branch, at 404-3488. Or send us an email.
We're taking care of Grenada.
Welcome back, viewers, to Community Forum. And I have the pleasure and honor to introduce our guest to our program this evening, and her name is Miss Kassandra Michelle. Kassandra has a mantra that she's guided by that I just think is lovely. She says, "We can be the change we wish to see." I think that is such a profound statement, because in other words, it's talking about us as people. Kassandra is an entrepreneur, she's an activist, she is the executive director and program manager of the Caribbean Association for Youth Development. She's an advisory director of the Caribbean Gender Alliance, a regional partnership of organizations working to promote healthy gender relations across the Caribbean. She's also treasurer and acting secretary of the Independent Caucus for Constitution Reform, and I know she's big on constitution and the reform and our understanding of our constitution. She's also a member of the United Nations Anti-Racism Coalition. She does work as a director of the Caribbean Center for Child Neurodevelopment, which is something I think we need to look at. I think that is such an interesting one. And a member of the Association for Women's Rights in Development, AWID. Kassandra is also a former youth parliamentarian and continues to work with at-risk groups such as women, youth, persons living with disabilities. I didn't see men here, but we won't talk about that. Understanding that no single approach is the right one for every individual, she devotes her time to advocating on a lot of issues, as you would expect, including governance, respect for the rule of law and constitution, and by extension, gender equality, human rights, climate change, youth empowerment, and domestic violence. There's a lot of things. Kassandra, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I think we have a mouthful of things. I can't believe you're involved in so many different things. Of course, all of them interlinked to some degree.
Yes, yes.
But I'm particularly interested in your work in youth development, protection for women and equalization of rights for women. I'm particularly interested in that. And of course, we're going to come to the constitution aspects and so on. But I wanted to start off by saying to you, your advocacy and your work as advocate in these NGO organizations, some people may interpret your critique of some things or your compliment of some things as political, right? And I suspect you will get a lot of pushback. So my first question to you is, are you an NNP or NDC?
I'm neither.
Good. So you're an advocate?
Yes.
Good. So tell me a little about your advocacy as it relates to youth. And I highlighted this area about child neurodevelopment and fosters children healthy brain development in the Caribbean. Tell me a little about that and what work you do there.
Well, CCCN just came into being about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. So we are fairly new and trying to find our way around. We decided, if you notice the intersectionality of the work that I do, and one of the things that stands out is the fact that, a lot of the times when you talk about neurodevelopment, you talk about older people, and there's not much emphasis on how neurodevelopment and neurological development affect children, especially within the context of the Caribbean, where you see a lot of violence. And within our space, one of the things that we continue to emphasize on is that it starts in the womb. It starts from when the mother is pregnant. And we started discussions on how can we raise awareness on healthy eating, because your brain, your neurology begins in the womb. So the music that you listen to as a pregnant woman, the environment that you're in, the food that you eat affects the child. And you see it in a lot of cases and brain development. So we are trying to work our way around. We are fairly new. We have 5 policy pillars that we are focused on, including trying to do some work within communities and advise government. So like I said, we're still figuring out our way, but like you said...
Do you see a link with that neurodevelopment issue of our children with the level of violence we see now among our youth?
Yes.
And particularly how our men are disengaged?
Yes.
Are we seeing that? Because we could probably link that back, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we have single mother families, but we always had that.
Yes.
Single mother, so that's nothing new.
Yes.
But we're seeing now a difference. And is that seeing some linkages there?
Yes, and not just men, but people on a whole. You mentioned violence, and one of the things that I always talk about within our space is that when you look at how our children are inculturated, our men, our boys and our girls are trained up differently. When a boy is crying, we tell them, you know, big boys don't cry, you know, no, suck it in. And we inculturate our boys and girls differently. So you have girls washing the dishes and the boys not doing it. So it's okay for the boy to be outside after 6 o'clock and the girl have to be in by 6. And that's one of the things that affect our children. And we don't see it. And for me, I have a passion for psychopathy. And tying it into the brain development of our children. So psychopathy many times is usually diagnosed when the person is an adult. One of the things that psychologists tend to say is that you cannot diagnose psychopathy in a child, and we don't agree. I know that there's not a lot of research around to kind of really help us, and that's where we're trying to kind of get data. But if there have been children, in cases in the developed world where you see children exhibiting signs of psychopathy, some psychologists believe that the signs that we see is just normal, development of teenagers. In some cases, you see, and very rare cases, but it do exist, where you have fire setting, and then you have all of those behaviors that we tend to think is normal, but is tied into psychopathy. And we are still trying to do some research. We are working with universities in Canada, right here with SGU and other universities to try to collect data and see how brain development, which begins in the womb, affect violence. And if we can do anything to change that. And of course, that's going to mean bringing our parents involved, because we will need their permission in order to get access to the children. But it's something that we are passionate about. And there is a tie between the neurological development of a child and the brain development of children to what we are seeing exhibiting, especially within the context of the Caribbean, where we're seeing high levels of violence and crime, perpetuated especially by men.
Kassandra, I am very pleased to see young people engaged in advocacy work. This is important, particularly involvement in NGOs and in social development, rural development, dealing with issues of gender violence. As your bio, as we learn about you, I think it's a time now, over 10 years probably, that governments recognize the importance of social partners in development, not only in consultation, but in participation and in adding as a force to development. Certainly in our region, in our Grenada, this has been recognized by governments in the past, and one knows there's a history, and our Judy Williams passed away, was very active in this and leading such a project. You've been involved in NGO. And so with the church, with labor, with NGOs generally, social partners involved in development. I think also that international organizations, whether it's the World Bank or name it, Caribbean Development Bank, recognize the participation and the importance of this participation, not just the influence, but to have a voice in this. I want to know, of course, we've had a change in administration here for the past, 18 months. What is your analysis of the involvement or the government, President's government, working with social partners, and what is social partners' contribution, particularly in the context of the government talking about transformative agenda? So these are fundamental changes and differences. What is the input of the social partners in this regard?
Well, just for the listeners who may not be familiar with who Social Partners
yes,
is.
Please, yes.
It was enacted in 2013, and as we know, in 2013, we did not have any elected opposition in our parliament. So the former administration saw the need for input from the grassroots people, from the opposition, and they created the Social Partners. And the Social Partners, as you very well know, includes trade unions, NGOs, who work in development work, who does work with women, youth, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
But we were created as a mechanism to be that voice, that balance when there was no opposition in our parliament. So we appreciated the social partners, the creation of the social partners. We did have meetings, and of course we are concerned about the mechanism and the composition of it, because one of the things that was raised by the older members of CSOs was the fact that the former Prime Minister was sitting as chairperson. If you have a social partners, then a representative from social partners should chair the social partners. But it is what it is, and we were able to be able to provide feedback in an era when there was no elected opposition in the parliament. So you fast forward to June 2022, when we had a newly elected government and selected individuals in office, and they have not engaged social partners thus far. And we have asked, we have reached out, and I remember but 6 months after the elections, and we were told that no, they were a young group of people and give them some time to settle down. But 18 months later, there's still no engagement with social partners. And we are, there is institutional knowledge and capacity within the social partners network. If you're using youth and inexperience as an excuse for not engaging. So if you need to tap into that institutional knowledge and capacity, you have a group of people here who have been around, a number of us for 30 years, 17 years, 15 years, some longer, to be able to contribute to the governance of our country.
There's a lot of...
I want to stick for one thing there and just to educate Kassandra a little. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was original member of the social partners. And when it started, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell wasn't the chairman, right? He had PS Mike and somebody else. But what we found was that decisions and information coming to social partners was not as it should be. So hence he took it over so that we could become more effective. That's why he was chairman. And he was effective.
The other thing is, but that's your opinion, that he was effective.
I'll finish explaining the point. He was effective from the point of view of what was happening at social partners, information flowing. And social partner group didn't start off as social partners, started as a tripartite. And he changed that and said, because the social partners and the NGOs complained that they needed to have a voice and a say. So it expanded from tripartite to churches, NGOs, unions, and so on being involved. So it was an all-encompassing social construct that was given information, was told where the government wanted to go, and this is the policies. And there was good discussions, agreement to disagree, and we agreed to disagree on certain things. Your grouping were well represented by Judy and Sandra. Very, as you know, strong women in their pursuits or whatever. But it was not perfect, and you will have that. So I just wanted to say that because I think it was an excellent initiative, and it should have been continued. I'm disappointed it's not continued by this new government, and probably they have something else in mind. But just to say that, I think it was well, and it was something that we will change and build. One of the most important things that came from that was the 2035 plan. That's where is
that plan still being used? Kassandra, the new administration boasts itself as being young, youthful in that regards. But what is your perception of young people regarding their stake, but more so not just stake, but their participation in what is now referred to as the transformative agenda? Are you aware of the involvement, participation? Young people are aware of their stake. How is this working out? What's your sense of this?
On the ground, I don't think young people feel engaged. I mean, it's commendable to have young people in governance, but I've always said it's one thing to have young people there, but if they're not grounded in the issues, then that's a whole other issue.
What do you mean grounded in the issues?
Well, when you look at the feedback of the young administration, there seems to be a disconnect between the policymakers, because that's what they are, the people in the middle class, and the people on the ground. There is a disconnect. And you see it in the policy decisions that they are making.
Examples?
That they are not connecting with the people on the ground. We recently had the launch of the, on the Road to 50, and you heard the announcement of the recognition of individuals as national heroes. And when you hear the pronouncements made in the public, it was clear that they did not consult with the people on the ground. And that's just one example of not having consultations. And if I may just even point to one parliament sitting where you had an MP saying that, there was no need for consultations. If we go to consult with all of you, then when are we going to get anything done? And you hear that as a general sentiment shared by many of them, that they are leaders and they don't need to consult with the people. So they make decisions on behalf of the people, and you get used to it.
But you have...
But I want to push back on the consultation.
You have consultation in the communities. You can hear that Minister X or parliamentary representative Y is having a consultation at the community level. Is this adequate, or isn't that consultation in your view?
Well, and to add, Kassandra, I kind of been around a little longer. My experience with the consultations is that you should engage. I am absolutely for that. But our Grenadian people does not want to engage. So I will call a consultation, a good example is constitution reform. And 5 people will turn up at Heinze School for that consultation. So you have people presenting on a podium why we should, so only 5 people here, only 5 people. And that repeats itself. So the issue of how much consultations do I make before I make a decision is a valid one to some degree. You should consult, don't get me wrong. You must get views. But when you go to a consultation with very few people, 5, 10, 12 people, what views you getting?
Then there's obviously something wrong there. So who
Something
do
wrong with both sides.
So who do you hold accountable when 5
Both
people show up at a consultation?
Both sides.
And then what
Our
happens?
people and the people who organize in the consultation. If we call a consultation and we say food and drinks, everybody turning up.
Yeah.
It's a mental thing. We don't want to talk serious business. Our constitution reform was a major fault in that. We had many consultations through the island.
I don't think you respectfully that you should use the constitution reform process as an example, because coming out of that, I think one of the outcomes that we all learn, and I'm certain you may agree, is that there are a number of Grenadians, too many of them, who did not know the constitution. So you have constitution reform and you have a consultation, and because it's a foreign document to many people, they're not going to come out.
So who you blame for that?
I'm not here to cast blame. We just need to find solutions as to how do we solve this. Because at the end of the day, Mr. Diali, we have representatives, right? That's what we elect, representatives to the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
So if you're making decisions, then the decisions that you're making supposed to reflect the needs and desires of the people that elect you. And if you have a consultation and people are not coming out, then you need to find out exactly why is it that the people are not coming out. If you look in the current construct of what is happening in a political arena, you have a consultation, and many times what happens is almost like a mini partisan rally, and that's a turnout for people who may want to genuinely go out and ask their representative from government.
You see colors.
Right, and that type of consultation is to get volume, not necessarily quality or substance. Yeah. But the other side of the argument is that when we as a people have to take responsibility for we and our country, not the politicians and the leaders. They are a minute thing of that. But you will hope they will reflect what our people want to see as changes, and that is where they need to consult and so on. So I'm agreeing with you on that. But we don't take no responsibility for ourselves. And when we call a consultation, and this is where the NGO community, in my view, has the greatest advantage. You reach people at a level that nobody else could reach. And you do it through your programs, and I think there is a need for the programs of that community to not only reach out for single mothers and children who are in need and schools and all of that, but to incorporate into that a certain level of education on things like the Constitution.
And that's what I was just going to allude to. You talk about whose fault it is. It starts within the schools, and I think one of the problems that older folks, adults have, is that we believe that when we walk out of the voting booth, that our responsibility in regards to good governance ends there, and it doesn't. We have a responsibility after we cast a ballot to hold our representatives accountable, to ensure that the decisions that they make reflect what we need, to ensure that the decisions that they make is the direction that we want to see our country going. And that doesn't happen. So we cast a ballot and we just leave it up to the representatives, the people in parliament and the public officers to make decisions on our behalf.
Is that what you mean when you say, because one of the things that I come across a lot from you, Kassandra, you talk about good governance, respect for the law, protection of rights and freedom. This is a phrase I've heard from you. What does it mean and why is it important?
What does it mean to be a good citizen? You mentioned it. We talk about consultations and the lack of engagement.
Yes. Yeah.
No, we have to hold ourselves. There is some sort of responsibility.
Yeah.
I am passionate about the Constitution. And while I know that I have to hold my duty bearers accountable, as right holders, we have responsibilities, we have duties as well. We have a duty to respect the law. We have a duty to hold our elected and selected officials accountable. But how do we learn that?
Yeah.
How do we learn that? We don't just wake up one morning and we automatically know. So maybe it's an opportunity for us now to look at our learning curve. We talk about transformation. So maybe we can introduce civics into our educational curriculum very early so that our young people, those who are coming up after us, understand what it means to be Grenadian. Because if you ask the ordinary person that, they don't know it.
Agreed.
They don't know what it means to be Grenadian.
Kassandra, Chris, we have to take a short break, so viewers, please stay with us. We'll be right back. Yeah.
The choice to finance your education is clear. Try the Grenada Development Bank Won't You Dare. Our special student loan was designed with care for your growth, development, and welfare. This is how champions are made. Take on that challenge. Don't ever be afraid. Our special student loan will come to your aid with 100% of your study costs being paid. Vulnerability is but a temporary condition, and conquering it is strictly ambition. You can secure victory despite your position with a loan for accommodation, books, and tuition. We see your potential. We notice your drive. So on your marks, get set. Let your dreams come alive. Don't let hurdles of doubt get in your way, because you are the future. Contact GDB today. Our special student loan is just one application away. Grenada Development Bank. Development through financing.
Concerned about your general health and wellness?
Do you need to know your complete blood count, lipid profile, or HbA1c?
Maybe you're an athlete or work in an environment that requires regular drug screening.
Interested in STI screening? What about renal, liver, or thyroid tests?
All these tests, plus hundreds more, are available at Allied Laboratories.
At Allied Laboratories, we are committed to providing the best service with accurate results. We now have 3 fully equipped locations to better serve you. You can contact our Grand Anse branch at 403-3488. You can contact our Grenville branch at 410-3488. Or you can contact our newest addition, the Guelph branch, at 404-3488. Or send us an email.
We're taking care of Grenada.
Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back, viewers. We on Community Forum. We're here with Kassandra Michelle. Before the break, Kassandra, we're looking at good governance. And one of the things when you observe your FB page, of which you have several hundred followers, is that you identify from time to time laws that you raise question about. 2, for example, I pulled out, and there are many. One had to do with the Bill to Amend Licenses Act, Cap 172, where it appears that they are making an exemption for attorneys to pay an annual licensing fee. The other one, and you said, why attorneys and why not everybody else? The other one you raised had to do with the fact that government is borrowing, I think it's $2.2 or $2.3 million to print a special commemorative $50 note that wouldn't be, this note is not to be issued for spending, but it's a It's like an investment that you buy. And you raise the question of who's going to pay for it. These are, but give us a brief comment on these two, for example. Why you think that? Are you opposed to it, or you think there should be consultation on it? Let's hear from you.
Well, when I saw the on the order paper the decision to exempt attorneys from paying fees, one of the first things that came to my mind was the principle of equality when you're talking about law. So recently we had the Allied Health Practitioners Act amended, and you have people like barbers and hairdressers now being charged additional fee, and maybe understandably so. Get yourself up to date, because you're dealing with chemicals and people's health and people's head. But then when you look at the legislation, the fines are ridiculous one, and they are being asked to pay some very, very high fees. But you're exempting attorneys.
Why? What was I didn't see this.
You didn't see that?
I didn't see the debate, but what was the reason given for exempting attorneys?
Is that they're paying a lot of fees. But
they're exempting doctors?
That's what I'm saying. And you have accountants and other people in different professions that are paying
engineers,
far more.
Yes,
in terms of licensing fees, and they are not being exempted. And that's why we go back to consultation. Had you consulted with different professions? I mean, I understand where the attorneys are coming from, with all due respect to them, but there are other professions that are paying far more in fees than they are. So why wasn't there consultation to get a general consensus from other professions, and maybe have equality across the board, where maybe you could reduce the fees for attorneys.
Perception is reality, Our Prime Minister is an attorney.
And that was one of the first things that I pointed out. But I don't understand it, because if you look, for instance, within the CBI, I heard the discussions earlier, the CBI. Per capita, how many lawyers are CBA local agents?
Huge.
Right.
So you're 80 to 90% of our attorneys are
CBI are involved in the CBI program one way or another. So with one passport sale, they make quite a bit of money, but you're reducing the fees for them. And then you have hairdressers and barbers who sit in their barber shop or their salon, and they have to wait for someone to walk in, or appointment from a consumer, a client who's been there for a number of years. But it doesn't guarantee that they're making any money.
So there's no equity in the bill.
So there's no equity in the bill and in the principle of the bill.
So these are part of it. The other one with the commemorative $15 note. What you saw, what was wrong with this in your view?
Independence is about us.
Yes.
We are approaching 50 years of recognizing independence since 1974. There was no discussion. And you'll hear me say this over and over with the people. Independence is about us being able to make decisions for ourselves, being able to govern our own country, elect people to govern our country. Moving away from associated statehood, that's something that we now appreciate. I wasn't born in that era. I'm still pretty young, but
you were.
But I was. It's something that we appreciate, and there was no consultation. And then you hear in the debates in the People's Parliament that we're having a commemorative bill, and quite a significant amount of money is being expended on this bill in a time when people are balling out, and that's the reality. And when you ask for a breakdown of, it was actually $7.5 million in total
for the years,
for the year's event, and there's no breakdown of the cost, with the exception of that $2.2 million.
So there isn't enough one consultation and explanation. The other thing, we just had one of the viewers said young people are lazy and complain too much. But where respond to that, but also the question of volunteerism and patriotism. What is the state of this, particularly among young persons in the country right now, Kassandra? And the comment that from this person that
just
we have.
To say young people are lazy is a broad brush to paint every young person. I know a number of young persons who are doing a lot of things, commendable things, and contributing to the development of our country. So I think that's a very broad brush to paint young people with.
There are a few bad ones in the mix.
That
gets all the attention.
Well, you can't stereotype it, and say it's all bad.
Good ones,
but patriotism and volunteerism, where is this, what's the state of this among the young population?
I think the word patriotism is overused. I don't think that we truly understand what patriotism is, to be very frank. Again, it goes back to understanding who you are as a Grenadian. Where was Grenada, and where are we now? Where are we going? And I think if we can answer these three questions, then we can talk about patriotism. Until then, I think the word is overused. Volunteerism. It doesn't pay the bills. 25 years ago, yes, you could call on young people to volunteer and get involved.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it has died. You see it within the CSO community where you see the same voice, the same set of people in the same set of space, many of us wearing 2-3 different hats, and we are not getting new blood in the CSO community.
Mm-hmm.
But is that a symptom of, because it speaks to, in my view, the volunteerism aspect. When I was a young man growing up, I was part of Rotaract, Rotary, and all of these service organizations, which still exist. Lions and all of them were there. And there is a certain level of volunteerism still in these organizations, the fact that they're there still. But in younger people, there is this commercialization of everything that they must do. So if I give time, I must be paid for my time. And that is coming from a new socialization that we didn't have before. And the issue is it something, the lack of volunteerism, is it something that affects us? Because when you volunteer to assist an elderly lady in a home, say for example, and you chat with them and you get experiences, it's a rewarding thing without the money. And I'm wondering if our young people are not missing that. And as a result, their approach to certain things in life has changed.
And I agree. And again, you tie it into patriotism. What does it mean to be Grenadian? What does it mean to contribute to the development of my country without being paid? A lot of the work that I do, many of the organizations I'm involved with, I do it for free, but I benefit from it. I get mentorship from the people who are there who are older than me, and from that I gain experience. A lot of the things that I learn.
And you're networking.
Exactly. I learn it from volunteering, and maybe we have to start selling it. So I know within the regional CSO space, we have started looking at that, because volunteerism, advocacy, if we don't grab hold of it, it's going to die out. So we have started a discussion.
And
how do we get the younger people?
thing in the world is Olympic sports.
Yeah.
When we put on Olympics, not one of those people you see there is paid. It's just to be part of the event. And I suspect, as you say, the selling has to be different.
You talk about yourself, of course, being a young person, but one of the things we read about you is that you're an entrepreneur. But tell me, as a young business person also, where youth and entrepreneurship, where is this? Is there sufficiently and adequate financing, support, technical support, and other resources available for persons like yourself? Is it adequate? How do you what's your assessment of this particular sector, SMEs?
And I like that you say adequate, because there are opportunities that exist.
Yes.
But whether or not we as young entrepreneurs, we get access to it is a whole other discussion. So I have seen more young people get involved in entrepreneurship, maybe not by choice many times, because with the whole world of work and job, unemployment.
No, unemployment has got, one of the government ministers said that it went down to 11% or 9 point something percent. You heard that?
Yes, but that's just an MP saying that in the People's Parliament. And it's unfortunate that when we have MP saying things that we don't have to
what was the numbers
check.
Did he use, Kassandra?
I think it was about 11 something percent.
Chris, you didn't hear that?
No, I don't get time something to watch.
Okay,
but where was the survey that was done for him?
Where's the data? Where's the facts to support
They're using empirical things in how construction is performing and that type of thing, and they're projecting that. That is where the figure must be.
But I think for entrepreneurs, we still need to call for a more enabling environment. The same factors that existed that prevented young people from wanting to start business exist now, even for those of us who have started business. Access to finance. I can speak from a female perspective. I'm sorry, I have to bring the gender in here.
No, it's okay.
Because as a female entrepreneur, we don't get access to financing. We don't have access to lands, access to other things. So while it exists, it's not adequate enough for us. And then you talk about the training. A lot of people start businesses, but they don't have training. So let me use the non-traditional sectors, for instance. So you get into farming, but people don't see farming as a science. They don't document their spending and their finances. So you have a small farm, when you want to expand, you can't go to the bank because you haven't documented your finances. So we don't see farming as a business or as a science, and a lot of the non-traditional sectors are experiencing this. So maybe there has to be some sort of emphasis, specific emphasis on how you can get and create a more enabling environment for young people in the business sector, and you from the private sector. So
yeah,
maybe
no, I want to comment. I mean, I think you're correct. The environment needs to shift. I'm not sure about the sexual part about female versus male. I just think the females are more active than the males, and probably we have to adjust to that as well, and coming forward with ideas. But I think one of the issues we still have as a society is that somebody in the pepper business, the main person will be involved in growing the peppers, cutting the peppers, processing the peppers, and they never have time for the administrative part. Because why? We tend to, I think some of our organizations make the admin part too complex for them. So I was saying to a young business woman, interestingly enough, is an exercise book. That's all. You don't have to have a computer, you don't have to have a big ledger. It's an exercise book.
Yeah.
1 page is for revenues, 1 page is for expenses.
Yeah.
And you have 1 bank account, 1 checkbook, and you monitor that. When you're finished with your chores with the business in a day and you make 10 bottles, you know, you record it on another page. That's my inventory, 10 bottles. That's what I said. I think one of the biggest part is teaching them how to cost and understand costing and how they price. And that is another part of it. GDP does some of that. But I think part of it is that we take these people out of their place to bring them in a room.
Yeah.
We need to do the reverse way.
Go
to them.
Go to the place, yeah.
Right? And then I also feel passionate about the issue of taxes and how we get them into the system. We don't have to, because when you get them into the system, they think it's about paying taxes. It's not about that. It's about getting information to the financial institutions, the credit unions, and so on, so they could assess the business.
Yeah.
But when they stay out, there's no information flow. And that is something we have to change. And I think the accountants and government, all of us need to adjust the Income Tax Act to encourage that. It's encouraging compliance.
Register the business, that type of details.
So some of these things, I am hoping if God bless me and I retire, I could go into that.
Cassandra, look, you are certainly, you're an avid follower of governance, what's happening in the political arena. I mean, and this shows up in your Facebook. That's the truth. What is your, the government is relatively new. You're looking at 18 months.
18 months?
A year and a half. Yeah? What is your overall assessment of the performance? And we can look at it, and we touched on the participation, but we look at other performance, the kind of policies you've seen, the kind of planning that you're seeing, the budget that's gone, the throne speech. Its performance. What is your candid assessment of the government to date as an observer, where you stand as an advocate?
I was very open-minded after June 23rd. I think many Grenadians wanted a change, and we got a change. Right. 18 months later, there are a lot of grumblings on the ground. Again, there is a disconnect between those that we have elected and those that are selected, and what is really happening. We talk about, I will stress again, consultations. They're not engaging the people. So there is a big disconnect, and you see it in the policy decisions that are made, and then you hear it in the feedback on the ground from the people. I am concerned that a lot of the sittings of Parliament and the amendments made to legislations and the legislations address simply focus on the fiscal state and nothing else. And I know of several legislations that were carded for amendment that are on hold, and for several reasons that I may or may not agree with. But when you and these legislations that they are making is affecting the people here, and the people here are not, well, yes, the people down here too, but in a negative way. You have the taking away of the 150 after they promised that they were going to increase the amount. And in a time where you have to admit that it's very, very hard economically for a lot of people. We are still recovering from COVID-19, and that's the reality. and you take away 150 from the most vulnerable. And I can hear the chattering on the ground that they don't like the use of the word, but the most vulnerable among us. And they are going to be among us whether you like it or not, or unless you make some sort of policy decision to drastically change that. And I don't see it happening.
But is there another aspect? Because I heard the Minister of Health today elucidated a number of bills that he's going to bring to Parliament for policy changes within the health sector. And I hear his announcement. The issue is, are they going to get to Parliament, and what is the content? Because you could talk the policy, but as you say, what is the content? And as you rightfully say, how much of that has been, in the early days in Parliament, we talk about white papers, right? And a white paper is a discursive paper before it comes into law. And we don't see that. That doesn't happen anymore. And I think that is one of the weaknesses of our system. In a white paper, you get the attorneys to look at it, the NGOs to look at it, the wider community, the private sector, based on where it's going to affect. And you give that out, and you develop that, and you get ideas, good ideas, that way you may change and make adjustments. And I support what you're saying, and I think that is probably something that we need to probably look at, how we could bring it into this government's time and make them, understand, because it's one thing to talk policies, another one to put it in place and then effect it.
Kassandra, what is driving gender violence presently? We seem to talk about this before. When you look at the assizes, a large amount, almost 50% are gender violence related, sexual, many of them. But what is driving this really? And what's your view of how this could be addressed? Because it's a problem.
Well, I think you can look at the cases brought before the judiciary in the pros and cons of it. More reporting might mean that people feel more empowered to go to the police and make report and feel that they have trust in the system. You can look at it that way. And more reporting could also be tied into other socioeconomic issues and violence where people are affected by the social economic issues. And again, I heard the discussion earlier about what's happening in the international world, the war with Israel and Palestine, the war in Ukraine, and other things. They affect us down here, and we are not accepting it. Again, you tie it in. You are seeing the intersectionality of everything that you're discussing. The war outside, policy decisions made within the People's Parliament, and how it's affecting the people on the ground. So when you see gender-based violence, it's an age-old thing, because we can trace it right back to slavery and even before that, and how our men and women were inculturated and how it has passed down to us. How do we address it? I think that is what we need to start asking.
But that will take another conversation, because I've just told by the producer that we're running out of time. But before you go, Kassandra, is there any pertinent point you'd like to make? We're probably going to have you back, but any closing comments you'd like to make?
Well, of course, the emphasis on good governance and respect for the rule of law. I think that what we have seen transpiring in recent times is a blurring of the lines. We talk about partisanship and politics. You can't get away from politics. Political decisions affect the price of sugar, the price of clothes, the price that you pay for rent, land, other things. But when you blur the line, then they have serious issues. And I've seen, and we, not just me, we are seeing a lot of that, where there seems to be no line between the partisan organization and representation of the people.
And our system, traditionally, the principle is there must be separation between Parliament, the executive, and the judiciary.
Yes, separation of powers. And we're not seeing this. We are hearing that this new government has respect for institutions. I don't agree. What we are seeing is almost a destroying of institutions, where our institutions are being laden with politicos whose allegiance is not to state and to the people, but to the party.
I would like you to say the country.
Yes,
because to the country. The institutions are supposed to be...
There's a very statement. I mean, clearly, Kassandra, we need to have you back, and we will. But that's all the time we have. Thank you very much. A pleasure having you as our guest this evening. Viewers, that's all the time we have. I want to thank you for being with us, staying with us. We'll see you next week, same time. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Community Forum came to you in association with the Grenada Development Bank.